Hello everyone, welcome to Facebook Live on the PinkUn page for myself and Paddy Davitt, fresh from Colney ahead of Norwich City's visit from Sunderland on Sunday. A few bits and pieces to talk about. We're going to be with you for about 10 minutes or so if that's okay, so get your questions in if you want to post those. Let us know where you're getting in contact from. But we got to speak to Stephen Naismith and Daniel Farker as usual. Pads, what would you like to talk about first? I'll open it up to you.
Big news, Alex Pritchard, I think. You know, it's pretty gloomy forecast. Stories are already up on the website. You can go and read it there in more depth. But essentially, a key figure at the start of summer. They're not going to be pretty much without him until maybe back end of the year. And Farker even said the phrase, till the new year, he doesn't expect him to be fully up to speed. So that's a major blow. Sounds like he had an ankle issue a couple of years ago at Tottenham. Had surgery then, so that would be a concern that he's got to go away now and have surgery on the same ankle. They try to avoid the sort of the knife route, as it were, but hasn't responded to treatment. So big blow, because the Pritchard of the last 10 games of last season is a guy who is going to feature fairly heavily. But if you want a silver lining, you've got Maddison has come on in a big way, given the opportunity. Wes is still in and around it, and the other guy you mentioned there, Stephen Naismith, now available, served his suspension and wasn't being operated in that central role during pre-season. So it's not complete. Where do we go from here? How do we cope without Alex Pritchard? But by the same token, you want all your best players available, and he's not going to be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a massive blow, isn't it? And I guess it's one of those where, out of all the positions it could have happened, it's probably the best one, the one that Norwich can afford to do without him for so long. And yeah, it's going to take him a while to get up to speed, isn't it? He had a bit of pre-season, but only really the first half.
No, it's a terrible blow for the lad as well, because I'm sure he would have, having effectively ran the show that last 10 games in Rally and Irvine, he would have gone away and thought, this is my season now. I'm really going to stamp my quality on this team and this division, you'd hope. But such is the fates and fortunes. And for what you were there, I wasn't there at Cambridge, but by all accounts it was a fairly innocuous challenge. But
yeah, I think at the time I thought it was a bad one, but because of the angle we were sitting. But actually, when I eventually watched the replay, which was about a few days later, the first leg that I thought came in didn't get anywhere near Alex Pritchard. It was kind of the trailing leg that just obviously trapped it almost. Yeah, and it's such a shame that it's therefore the same ankle he did at Spurs as well. Yeah. So get well soon, Alex. We'll see you in November, hopefully. Sean, Germany, and Sandra Milburn both say they're gutted for Alex Pritchard, which is very much the case. Yeah. And slightly better news on Tim Closer, I suppose, in that he will hopefully be back around the international break, which I think is kind of what we knew anyway. And they're out. Actually, any other injury news? Any injury worries away from that, which is good.
No. The ones we knew won't be anywhere near it this weekend. Jamal, Harry Toffolo, Thompson, obviously Closer. But coming out of Tuesday's game, particularly focusing on Evo and Wes, who've got their first real action of the season. According to Farker, no problems at all. Pulled up all well and good. So that's a positive because, and obviously, probably segue into another individual who's going to be available this weekend.
Should we do it? Nelson Oliveira. You asked him, Paddy, and Daniel Farker offered his last words. How long was that last word exactly?
15 minutes, conservative estimate. Wow.
It's very good again.
Yeah, it was very good, yeah. But I think I've had enough of Nelson Oliveira's shirt rumpus. So
can you knock it down into 3 points?
Yeah, he's back in the fold. He's apologised to Farker and his teammates, and that's the end of the matter. And that's really where we are. So anybody who was fearing this was the beginning of the end for Nelson Oliveira in terms of his Norwich career, slightly premature, I think. Now, whether there's further spats down the line, I'd venture there probably will be, because that's kind of the nature of the guy. Separating out the football ability, which isn't in question. He's as good as anything in the Championship. But clearly there is a temperamental issue, and we've seen it sort of at Rotherham last season, didn't we, when he reacted and got sent off. We saw it most recently on Saturday. Farker kept him well away from the Swindon set-up, which was the right thing to do. They've obviously spoken now, the dust has settled. Interestingly on that, I thought Naismith, who we spoke to before the head coach came through, had said the senior boys had got round him, told him he was basically in the wrong. I think he probably knows by now he was in the wrong, but they've reiterated that you can't have that. So there's almost a bit of a in-house sort of self-policing going on there with some of the senior boys, and you'd imagine he's referring to himself, Russell Martin, Jerome, maybe not Jerome given that they're competing for the same position, but certainly Wes maybe as well. So I think he'll have been left in no doubt now, both with his own peers and with the head coach, that he overstepped the mark. But in Farke's view, that is the end of it. He's spoken quite glowing terms about Nelson, about the type of character he is, that he's a really good lad. You know, there's no issues with him, but clearly in that incident he was completely offside. And it's been done to death. So I'm with the head coach now. Let's put it behind us and move on.
And you didn't take 15 minutes, so that was because that would have literally been it, I think. What have we got here? We could probably reflect a little bit more on Stephen Naismith. Chris Leeton asks, so Naismith very much in Farke's plans now going forward. I mean, it does seem that that's the case. And he was talking about how we didn't want to use the word settled, but clearly how much happier. He seems like he's in a happier place this time compared to 12 months ago. I think so. I mean, and he was really honest. He feels he has things to prove. He feels he has let people down. He hasn't lived up to the billing of that opening debut. If we all remember that mad game against Liverpool, which Norwich fell the wrong side of, but he did enough to suggest, well, this guy's going to be very good. And then the rest of that season almost tailed away. Now he attributes that, and he reiterated again today, to really he wasn't fit. He arrived, he wasn't fit. I think he'd had a few injury issues at Everton the first half of that season, and his base fitness wasn't there. Well, that is completely removed, because he's as much as he's not been available in terms of suspension, he's done the whole pre-season here, a gruelling pre-season by all accounts that you speak to. So fitness straight away won't be an issue. So it's whether now he can get himself into the starting lineup, get a consistent run of games, and we actually see the player who we've seen in glimpses. And my mind goes back to Leeds last season. Brilliant finish, 25 yards out, top corner. Quality from an individual who has that, but we haven't seen enough of in a Norwich shirt. So, yeah, it's important to stress that. I think he knows that himself. It's not that he needs to be convinced that he's not lived up to A, the price tag, and B, his billing. I think he realises that he's got plenty to prove, and it's good to hear him talk. It's refreshing, actually, that there's a guy who maybe could have thought, well, this isn't for me, this club, but let's get ourselves a move somewhere else, another payday. But no, he feels that he needs to deliver on everything which Norwich went and got in the first place, and we haven't sadly seen enough of that type of Stephen Naismith. But I wouldn't be at all surprised to see him line up in the 11 on Sunday. Yeah. Where does he sit then? Because, I mean, the 11...
Well, in pre-season he was basically central midfield. He played him at Bielefeld, I think, that day. Can't think if they played after Bielefeld. They came back and played Charlton, and he was central midfield again, basically in tandem with Vrancic. Maddison was in a slightly deeper role. From what I've seen of Vrancic so far, I would quite happily see him out of the lineup and Naismith back in alongside Wes, Maddison. And I suppose you're looking at maybe Amali Watkins in there as well, with Harrison Reed behind him. And as I think we discussed just after the press conference, that midfield, a midfield of Reed, Naismith, Maddison, Houlihan, you put that on a par with anything in the Championship. So that to me is quite an exciting proposition, and that's obviously not even throwing Pritchard into the mix.
No.
So yeah, if we get the Stephen Naismith of pre-season, then I think people will be pleasantly surprised, because he's certainly talking a good game, but it's obviously now he knows himself. So he's only going to be judged by on the pitch and what he does. So, he needs a run of games, and I think he'll get it under Farke.
A bit of speculation that came out while we were at Colney about Richard Money, who's of course the academy head of the academy at Carrow Road. I mean, nothing was really said during the presser,
right.
So I guess we'll see if something comes out over the next day or two officially about all that. What else do we have here? James Live asked, do you think we'll sign another striker? I mean, you put to Daniel Farke about in terms of, does he want to sign any more players? What's the actual deal here? Because it does sound like they've done most of their business, and it's a lot of business.
Yeah. No, I think in an ideal world now, I mean, you saw in the last day or two Tony Andrew go out. I think if they could move one or two more of them type of fringe players out, they would do. But in terms of incomings now, I think it's all guns now trained on a centre-back. And Leisner again has resurfaced in recent days, hasn't it? That link. I think if they, between now and September 1st, if they've got a centre back in, that would, in their eyes, be deemed as a very productive window, I think.
Last couple of minutes, so if you've got any questions, get them in. I don't think we've missed anything major from the presser, but just to reiterate, let's have a look what was asked here. Yeah, Stephen Clark asked, is an increased expectancy to get a result, considering Sunderland have only had 2 days to recover from their cup game, which was of course last night.
Yeah.
And Chris Reynolds mentioned Sunderland played a lot of their youth players in the cup, and Daniel Farke played it down. Although he did say he'd rather have 2 days longer than 2 days fewer.
He did, but he did caveat. He did make that point that I don't think the 11 that played against Derby on the opening weekend, it was Friday last, wasn't it? I don't think that 11 lined up against Bury. So yes, okay, they've had 2 days less, but I think lads like Catamol and that didn't even travel to Bury yesterday, so they'll come straight back in, and you would think they've got enough resources in their squad that. But ultimately, yeah, it stands to reason. If Norwich have had 2 extra days preparation, there's no travel involved for them this weekend, so they're little factors that hopefully go a long way to the result.
Marginal gains.
Yeah.
Marginal gains. Paul Alba asks about how Daniel Farke viewed Sunderland. You asked him how he saw that.
Yeah. Well, he did use the phrase, but he basically had them down as a long ball team. So
they probably all look like long ball teams.
Well, I mean, yeah, drawing a parallel obviously with Fulham, who are probably the other end of the scale in terms of how they want to dominate the ball and go through the thirds. But if that is the case, then, which is another topic we covered, then there's going to be a big onus on the centre backs and the defensive 4/3 with Gunn, because they're going to be obviously put under pressure, and they were found sadly wanting the guys on duty on Tuesday night. So if it's a more direct approach, he's going to face through Sunderland. I mean, he talked about Grayson being a reputation as a very coach who has a big desire to have compact teams. So I think they'll be defensively very sound. Norwich will have to break them down, I think, quite intelligently. And in terms of going the other way, it does sound like it's bypass midfield and let's test Norwich's Achilles heel.
Yeah, which has been. And you did ask him about that. Really interesting in terms of the set-piece defending and how they are effectively playing zonal defending from set-pieces this season rather than man-for-man marking, which... Does that fill you with dread? Because a lot of teams in England struggle with it.
I mean, there's that debate's been ongoing now in the Premier League, hasn't it, for certainly last season, maybe even last 2 seasons. It's something we're not... As a football culture over here, we're not used to that. It's always the man-to-man, and if that guy scores, then it's quite easy to pinpoint who's responsible. Now, you could argue that last season Norwich went man-to-man with limited success on many an occasion. So if it's worth trying, then let's have a look at it. But just on the evidence of Swindon, there was far too much kind of after you, and he talked about needing to show an aggressiveness in the defending, to sense the danger and actually go and meet the ball, which... my limited experience of zonal, that is an issue, because if you're just basically detailed to mark an area of space on the near post, then is it your fault if a man comes across? And obviously by that point it's too late then, because the ball will be in the air as it was midweek, and they've got to run on the defender, and it just looks like it's such a poor goal to concede when you've got so many bodies in the box and nobody discernibly marking anybody. So again, maybe that's a cultural thing we'll have to get used to, but it's certainly this guy wants them to defend zonally, so if that's what he wants, they need to get better at it, and quick. There'll
be lots of video clips over at PinkUn.com and the YouTube channel. Nice little line about the cup draw that Daniel Farke watched. He enjoyed that. Anything else up on here? Michael Garwood asks, thoughts on Lewis Graben's reception on Sunday?
I'd imagine it'd be fairly negative. Yeah.
He'll do well to get a positive one. Right, I think we're done. We'll wrap it up there. I know we've got a few questions still to ask, but we'll obviously come on to those over the coming days and weeks, and we'll be around with all the analysis, match coverage of Sunday's game. Remember, it is Sunday, 1:30pm kickoff. So follow all that at PinkUn.com. But for now, thank you very much, Pad. Thank you all for watching, and we'll see you again very, very soon.